Well, why don't you drop us a line? Address it to a Let's Talk program in care of Vaughan Radio, P.O. Box 195, Charlestown in Nevis. Or give us a call. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. And by the way, those will be the numbers you'll use to be a part of this evening's discussion. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. This is your voice in the community, thought that get results. With regard to your participation in the show, we encourage you to call in on the numbers listed 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Here's a suggestion. You have a question or comment, perhaps you can get a pencil, piece of paper, write it down so that you're well organized, and when you get on the show you take as little time as possible so we can accommodate as many of you as we can. We ask only, first of all, you respect yourselves and then respect others, because we will not accept anything we deem that's not within our broadcast standards, but we encourage you to always be forceful with your point. You can also follow us by the video streaming of this program on our YouTube channel at Vaughan Radio and also on our Facebook page at Vaughan Radio. Thank you all again. Your voice in the community, thought that get results. Tonight, Conrad Nair Liebert, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and a pleasant good evening to my colleagues here, Mr. Brand, Dr. Bartlett, around the table. Good evening to your workers here at Vaughan Radio, Webbo, and good evening to Nivisions, home and abroad. Webbo, once again, I'm happy to be here to discuss the issues affecting the people, and there seems to be quite a lot to talk about now, because we got the war in Ukraine, and we got the local politics. It's quite interesting things happening recently, and we understand there's a new wave of COVID coming through, so I suppose quite a lot to talk about, Webbo. Thank you very much for having me once again.
The Honorable Spencer Brand, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and a very pleasant good evening to my colleagues around the table, Conrad Nair Liebert and Dr. Bartlett. Let me say a very pleasant good evening to both Mr. Stanley and Theodore Ted Hobson, QC. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here once again. Let me say a good evening to our listeners and viewers to this edition of Let's Talk here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and certainly further afield. I want to say a very pleasant good evening to those families who are a bit down tonight for one reason or the other. There might be some loss in the family, death in the family. I certainly want to take this opportunity to offer my condolences to all those families who are in mourning tonight. Certainly hope that they can remember their loved one with fond memory. To those who are ill in our various hospitals here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and to those who are seeking medical attention further afield, certainly hope that they would be up and about very shortly, wishing them a very speedy recovery with divine intervention, and certainly with the good services and the good works of the nurses and the doctors. To those who are celebrating tonight, whether it's a birthday, a wedding anniversary, or some accomplishment in their life, certainly want to say how wonderful it is that they can have this celebration. I want to particularly mention Mr. Stephen Jones in the Hamilton area. He's not been keeping too well, but he's celebrating today. I certainly want to wish him a happy birthday tonight, and I hope that he will be around to enjoy many, many more birthdays. Webbo, thanks for the invitation tonight, and I am certainly looking forward to tonight's discussion.
Dr. Patricia Bartlett, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo. Good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to the entire listening and viewing audiences, and in particular, my warmest Tuesday night greetings to my cousin Simic over there in St. Kitts. He listens religiously when I'm on. I don't know when other people are on. So I just want to thank my cousin for the continued support, and I hope that tonight would be up to your expectations. Stephen Jones, I would just like to join Mr. Brown in extending greetings, birthday greetings to Mr. Jones. Him and I go a long way back. We worked together at the Agriculture Department for quite a while, and it is always a pleasure, Mr. Jones, and I wish you many more birthdays. And of course, I'm looking forward to engaging Nair in all the issues that he's already suggested that we might be able to discuss tonight. War, politics, COVID, the whole 9 yards. I'm here for it. Thanks for the invitation, Webbo.
Okay. somebody mentioned, might have been Naya, that we got a range of things that we can look at and the time that we have. So a lot of people have been talking about the PAM convention on Sunday, right? Naya, that's one of the things you're referring to?
Yes.
So you want to talk about that? Huh?
Yes, I would be happy to talk about that. To be quite honest with you, I don't think I'm the best one to start talking about it.
I'll start.
Okay, beautiful.
I'll start. So, what happened was, the theme was keeping the promise. So you have a coalition with the Concerned Citizens Movement, PAM, and the PLP. So, Mr. Brantley, who is the leader of the Concerned Citizens Movement, was a feature speaker. And you find that Dr. Simmons, the Right Honorable, who is a national hero, he was one of the founding members of PAM, and he was there giving an address as well. And what was interesting, Mr. Brantley, Miss Dr. Simmons, and the leader of PAM, the Honorable Sean Richards, all spoke to keeping the promise and referencing the promise that unity had in part. So I get a clip which will, for the folks who did not hear the entire thing, will give a synopsis, just a small snippet of Mr. Brantley, Mr. Simmons, and Mr. Richards. By the way, Dr. Harris, the Prime Minister, who is the leader of PLP, was present, but he did not speak. Also, I am learning that PLP will be having a press conference tomorrow, and their convention is Sunday. So let's just go to those snippets, and then we can talk on the flip side of it. So I have Mr. Brantley first, and then Mr. Richards, and then Dr. Simmons.
The fundamental promise that no leader would serve more than 2 terms as Prime Minister. I want you to know that 2 terms was not guaranteed to any leader, but it was agreed that no leader would serve more than 2 terms. Citizenship by investment monies would be shared pro rata between St. Kitts and Nevis on a population basis. This too, my friends, was critical, as the people of Nevis had been locked out of the benefits of the CBI inflows.
We in PAM cannot be expected to hold hands that are no longer opened. We can't extend an open hand to be given a closed fist in return. Our commitment must be matched by the commitment of everyone and every single group. Without such commitments, the very concept of unity will be on life support.
Okay, first Mr. Brantley, second, just heard Mr. Richards, now Mr. Simmons.
When in 1984 we won 6 seats in Parliament, we were capable of forming the government on our own, but that is not the PAM way. We do not abandon our friends. PAM's loyalty has been proved over and over. Our word is our bond. This is not the time to be taking on personal grouses or irritating dissatisfactions.
Okay, now when you put all that together, the PAM convention, unity is at the helm of administration. Now, what do you make of it?
Well, I'm disappointed as an individual of the Federation, to be quite honest. I think he's gone down a road that I think it probably should not have, in a sense. And those who initiated the whole process, those who have been a part of it, I think to a great extent they probably lack some foresight. And for some reason, develop a trust that was very scarce over many, many years as it relates to relationship between political parties and relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis, the political relationship, Webbo. But that's why some maybe was saying that, of course, this thing that was signed on the courthouse, in the courthouse in Nevis, should have been probably made into law. Again,
just correction, on the courthouse steps or the apron, right?
Yes.
So I don't want people to think, you know, it was in the courthouse.
Okay,
I just wanted to
at
point
the
that out.
courthouse,
Yeah.
on the apron, yes. Because maybe if it was signed inside, it would have been a different thing.
Different, yeah.
But it was signed outside.
Yeah.
And I say, somehow we had a rebirth of trust that wasn't there for a very long time, Webbo. And I don't want to hold the mic too much. I would come back. But I'm very, very, very disappointed because as a Nivision, we've been through this. We've been through this over and over again. And it looks like we are ready to, or the road has been paved for another dealings across the waters, probably in the next election. Depends on what may happen. So we've been put there at arm's length, and that's what I get from the little excerpts you've just been playing. We've been put there at arm's length only to be called upon when needs be.
Brian, what do you make of it?
Well, the idea of team unity was to achieve a number of objectives. One certainly was the first and main objective certainly was to bring the two islands of St. Kitts and Nevis closer together in a political union and political arrangement that would see greater benefits to Nevis and certainly to St. Kitts as well. The other objective, Webbo, was certainly to remove the Douglas regime from the seat of governance here in St. Kitts and Nevis. The record would show that the last few years of the Douglas government, St. Kitts and Nevis went through a very dark period. We have had issues with Canada, we have had issues with our citizenship, we have had issues with crime, our economy. There were a number of issues, and it was generally felt that the opposing parties coming together would try and bring some stability and mutual respect and clearer understanding and a clearer pathway to the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. I would say, Webbo, in all honesty, some of that was achieved. The record would show that under Team Unity, Nevis would have received more than they would have received in the past. While we would have received more, it is still nowhere close where we ought to be. So there are still some challenges. The document that both Sean Richards, the Deputy Prime Minister, the leader of PAM, and the Premier, the Honourable Mark Brantley, spoke about in their presentation was the Charlestown Accord. And I want the people to recognize that that was the fundamental document in which, or through which, this Team Unity arrangement was constructed. It spoke about term limits for the Prime Minister, 2 terms. It spoke about the financial arrangement, sharing financial arrangement. And let me make it clear here, Webbo. The financial sharing arrangement that we are speaking about has nothing to do with the revenues and tax that is generated from the ordinary businessmen and women in St. Kitts. It specifically speaks to the citizenship by investment programs that we share as a federation together. That is what we are speaking about. So, and I think that while there was some progress in achieving some of those goals, I believe that the idea of Team Unity felt somewhat extremely short as it regards to one, the relationship towards Nevis, and I think that the camaraderie as it were between the various partners in Team Unity leaves a lot to be desired. I listened to all of the presentations. Dr. Kennedy Simmons, our living national hero. I listened to the Premier of Nevis, and I personally felt that that was, in my mind, one of the better political presentation I've heard in a very long time. And I listened to Sean Richards' presentation, and it seems to me, Webbo, that the presentations basically are exposing the difficulties and challenges that Team Unity is facing. And I think that while they have done that, I do not believe that the intention is to create any major harm or discord between anyone. It is simply pointing out what are the challenges, how they can fix it, and how they can move forward, and living up to the various agreements that were signed to create Team Unity. I thought that the convention, Webbo, was listening to it, like I said, was one that was high energy. I thought that the presentation was extremely well, and I think that in the coming days and weeks ahead, a lot of people will continue to speak about what was said at that convention, because I personally feel that it gives the Federation an opportunity to pause. It gives the Federation an opportunity to look at where we are and try and analyze what the challenges are and try and see how best, if possible, those challenges can be fixed and for us to move forward.
Dr. Bartlett?
Yes, Webbo. Webbo, the PAM convention, or I would prefer to refer to it as an intervention. This was the most embarrassing convention I have ever witnessed. And for the simple fact that there was cussing from the beginning to the end. Mind you, one or two people might not have been involved in it, so let me not make it sound like really it was from the beginning to the end, but mainly to the end. I was so disappointed because what we had here parading in public, these are issues that should have been dealt with in a private forum, and that is my opinion, my strong opinion on it. And it speaks to a group that is dysfunctional. I think that a good proportion of the St. Kitts Nevis population probably would agree with me, because I've heard the same thing being repeated in different quarters. But the dysfunction did not have to be borne out in front of the diplomatic corps, and that was my main concern. It was disrespectful to the PM, but he sat through it, and I give him all the props for that. If I were in his place, I probably would not have gone, knowing what has been transpiring for the past couple of weeks and the build up to this crescendo, because this is not something that I don't think that he was not expecting, because, and I'm being presumptuous here, I'm assuming that he was not invited to speak. So if everybody else in the coalition got a invitation to bring fraternal greetings, why would you not extend the same courtesy to one of the members of the coalition? But Webbo, I've heard that coalitions are not necessarily good or not necessarily ideal for governance. Coalition usually would serve the purpose of which Mr. Brand said was one of the objectives, and that is to remove a sitting government. And ordinarily, you have coalitions with just two parties, and they sometimes, most of the times, it seems like they can't make it to the end of a term. And now we have one here with three fractions, and they've made it through at least one term. So it begs the question, why are they holding on to each other for dear life and they seem not to be getting along. They seem not to be trusting each other. They seem not to be able to function within the best interests of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. When I heard keeping the promise, I'm like, these politicians got guts, more guts than hyacinth bread, because they're talking about keeping promise, and there's a litany of promises that they have not delivered on. So I'm like, if somebody asked me to give a speech on keeping the promise, I would try to keep it as vague and open as possible. But they zoned in on the two issues that was most pressing for them. And when I hear the complaint about 2 terms, isn't there a legislative pathway to getting 2 terms? It has been discussed. I think that it was drafted. Why hasn't it, been brought for a vote? If you're serious about 2 terms, and I've said it before, you can institute that in your own party if you wish. But to try to get trust between 3 different fractions, everybody pulling in different direction, I think that it is not necessarily that it is not doable, but it's not likely. We're not likely to see that. And the Prime Minister, the living national hero, he, I think, was the first one who would have mentioned trust. And trust is a big thing. And that is something that I've been crying out for the longest while now. We cannot trust our own government. And that's not good enough. So to see it played out there, like I said, I was embarrassed. I didn't think that was the place for it. And I don't even think that, I heard my Premier making a plea again for Nevis's share of the CBI, our fair share. And a lot of people are asking, what is fair share? By now, one would think with all these educated men around the table that by now we would have at least have a framework as to how do we get to calculating what fair share is. Apparently there are times when we accept what we get. Notwithstanding, I'm not even going to touch tonight on the fact that we seem to waste most of what we get. But if we satisfied and we keep, if somebody owe me and they're not giving me what is worth, my pride would tell me, I ain't going to take nothing until you give me what is due to me. But when I heard the build-up to the convention, and I heard that, our Premier was going to be the featured speaker, and then after that I happened to knock upon some WhatsApp that was going around of, people being invited to this big event that was supposed to transform everything in St. Kitts Nevis and the way for Nevis and all the rest of it. I said, wow. And I even made a post of it, and I was willing to bet at that point that the Premier was going to, at the end of the convention, him and the panel leader were going to hold hands up and raise and say, well, this is the document that we have now that we're going to take to the legislature, that we're going to take to Parliament, and we're going to make sure that Nevis finally is going to get what is their fair share. And lo and behold, I was disappointed again, because after this big build up, and I heard even the Calypsonian who would have sang about Giwi SIDF money would have even been on the trip in the entourage, to go down to collect the money. So I said, good, this is good for Nevis. Finally, we're getting what is ours, and it's going to be law, because they're going to go into the House and, into Parliament, and they're going to make it law. So this is the final agreement. Put aside the Chancellor Accord, because apparently that is something that was just built on trust. But I was looking forward to something concrete. And I think that the NRP has been saying it over and over again. You've been repeating it over and over and over again. Get it into law. Get it into law, so it doesn't matter whether we have a coalition, it doesn't matter where we're at, what kind of government we have, whether we have a government that is exclusively all 18 St. Kitts and they disregard the 3 Nevis, that we would always get our fair share. So I was disappointed on the one hand, as it relates to the CBI brought up as an issue, as a cussing issue, because that's what it was. Because you cuss. Monday morning, where are we? Are we any better off? Or is it that somebody will say, okay, well, you cussed last week, you cussed on Sunday, so I'm going to give you some money this on Monday, so you could calm down. And still, in a couple of years to come, we're still with the same fight about giving me SIDF money. I'll leave it at that point for now.
Webbo, it was transforming to me. What was said was very transforming. To me, there was quite a bit of, to me, words of severance, disunity, really. To me, the trust have been broken, and the question is, what will happen now, really? Divisions have been left wondering, again, what role will we play in the next federal administration? It's too much uncertainty as it relates to the direction of my little island, Webbo. To me, what was said yesterday is very transforming. It's almost like a revolution. It's almost like a revolution. I mean, it's almost like a coup. In other places, I mean, the Prime Minister might have been arrested and taken away. And to me, that's how far-reaching that was. Very far-reaching. And as Dr. Bartlett said, there's a lot of intelligent people around the table. Certain things you just cannot write on a piece of paper and based on trust and some little friendship, especially where Nevis is coming from. We have a serious history, and at times we forget that history, and we keep repeating, we find ourselves in the same position all the time. Really and truly, I agree with Dr. Bartlett that it's quite a nuisance to the ear to be hearing that we still have to be arguing about fair share.
Well, I just want to pick up on two things that Dr. Bartlett said in her presentation. She indicated that this was a matter that should have been discussed in private. I think those were her words. If I were to say to you, Dr. Bartlett, that this matter have been written about in private countless times without any serious resolution. You also indicated that there is a lot of wise men or smart men around the table, and by now that they should have worked out the formula or solution or resolution as to what is a fair share. I would submit to you, Dr. Bartlett, that there is that mechanism that is in place as it regards to how or what mechanism is being used to arrive at quote-unquote a fair share. And it has to do with the mechanism of the pro rata basis as it relates to our population and the variance in the population between St. Kitts and Nevis. That has been the mechanism that has been put in place in the document. So there isn't any, I really don't think that there is a leg for anyone to stand on to say that the necessary channels haven't been exhaustive. Like I said to you, this is a matter that have been written about countless times. There is the document on which Team Unity was constructed and went to an election and assumed the reins of government. And I find it very interesting that while Team Unity may have had, for argument's sake, a document that highlight 10 or 12 positions, well, 3 of those positions may be enforced, 3 of those positions may be
Mr. Brand, let me just interrupt you and take this caller. Good evening. Okay, please go on, Mr. Brand. Caller, please try again.
A few of those positions with regards to the agreement may be working, but what happened to the others? And when persons highlight the weakness and the fact that some of those agreements are not being adhered to, it is being looked upon as, Naya used a word here, coup. I don't know if it's a coup. It's just a matter of stating the facts and with the result of the ultimate benefit for the people of Nevis.
We witness a debacle. We witness a debacle. We witness a breakdown. And that's what I'm feeling so bad because...
Okay, let me take this. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yes, Mr. Herbert, what we having is anger, pent-up anger that was released. And that explains, for me, a lot of statements that has been made over the past couple of months by elected officials. There was this anger that was released in Senke. And that to me says a lot, that people could have been carrying around this anger and hatred during a pandemic. And that made me ask the question, was the government officials speaking with one voice during the pandemic, knowing the hatred they was carrying around for each other? That, Mr. Herbert, the citizens should ponder on. A pandemic, locking down people. Now I understand why certain statements was made. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you for holding. Good evening. You're on the air.
Wrong number. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Go, Dr. Bartlett. I'm finished.
Webbo, it's interesting what the caller said about the anger, because really it seems like these guys were angry. But for me, it's about the disrespect. And, you know, like I said, and I maintain, I know Brand said that a lot has been done behind the scenes, and I'm just trying to suggest that that's where it should stay. And when you come to us, you should come to us having made a decision on the way forward, because to come disrespect each other in public and then we're still at square one, then why would you have engaged in such? I mean, it was so, for me, you know, I can't imagine being there. I would have been so demoralized, you know, because to see our leaders, people who we should be looking up to, carrying on in that manner, I don't think that it was a good thing for the country. Obviously, there's a power play here. It is everybody talking about, I mean, we just came out of an election. It's not even 2 years good, you know, and the next election is not due for the next 3 years. I mean, why are we talking about who is going to be next? Yeah.
Let me take this. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Webbo. How are you? Good evening to the panel.
Good evening.
And I will just like to ask Dr. Bartlett something. Dr. Bartlett, I listened to the convention from the beginning to the end. The document was signed on the courthouse step. That's in public. I was there at that event. They read it out and everything. Why should they go into private if they have a little issue over the fee share? They should, no. He come out in public. He let the public know. Right? And you're saying there was arguing. I wouldn't call that argument. You know, both all of them, they talk and they say they make agreement. The agreement wasn't fulfilled, so they just talk about it. Right? I think it's make $500 and something million from the passport, the CBI thing, the passport money, right? And they only give Navy Party something. So definitely they have to talk about it. The people have to know. So it was no argument over to say they're in there arguing and so. You say a good point. Yes, they should have, like the diplomats, the Chinese diplomat and all of those diplomats was there, the core. That's a good point you said, because when I hear that, I was saying from the beginning too that Mark should not just come out and talk like that and talk like them a one them kind of thing. But he was good. But he maybe, as these callers say, he was just a message like they hold inside of them, so they get a little chance to come out and say it, and that's how it goes. I can listen to the show, my friend.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Webbo, I respect the fact that the caller and I,
Okay, let me just take this. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good evening, Webbo. How are you doing?
All right.
Thanks, Brian. I hope you are doing well. You are talking about apples and oranges. When you say that there's a method in place for the sharing, talking about revenue sharing from the revenue from Sinkers Nevis. Remember, we had 2080. When you talk about the population, now you're talking about the FDI program. Which one really are you all talking about? Because when we did not have a payday in Nevis, that's when the revenue sharing was being done properly, as it were, inverted commas. But then when the season opened and we got a payday, our second premier then went and made another arrangement and stopped the revenue sharing between Sinkers and Nevis. So we really got to get our act together, and I think that this is the time for constitutional reform. Now that time on the government benches in Parliament, it is time to look at the constitution of Sinkers Nevis. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, okay, caller, please call back.
Webbo, there's a lot. Well, the truth is, Webbo, when I first heard about the topic being discussed, keeping the promises, I really thought that they were talking about keeping promise to the people, the electorate. I don't know. It's about keeping promises as it relates to who's going to be the next prime minister and so forth.
Well, let me ask you this, Naya. Keeping promise in terms of what they outlined, that was not a promise with the people?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just checking.
Yes. But what I'm talking about was basically meeting the needs of the people. When I understand that would have been the topic. And but Webbo, I have a problem with this too.
Let me get this. Let me invite the caller and then. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Webbo. Mr. Webbo, Ms. Bartlett made a strong point about the two terms issue that they spoke about at the convention. That was something they should have brought into law. If that was brought into law, none of that would have mentioned at the convention about reminding the Prime Minister that this is his second and final term. Had that, yes.
Caller, go ahead. You're hello?
Yeah.
You seem distracted. Are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. I'm listening to you.
You're listening. We're listening to you. Are you finished?
Yes. No, I was making my point that had that draft been brought into law where the Prime Minister would understand his own two term, that convention would have had less conversation in reference to reminding him that this is his second and final term. Secondly, Mr. Brown missed the point what Ms. Bartlett was saying about fair share. What Ms. Bartlett was saying, if there's a document draft up to say, okay, this is what a fair share is. Yes, we understand the population of Nevis compared to the population of Sinkers, but there has to be something drafted up into law that we know is it going to be 20%, 30%, 4%, let it be into law. Lip service is not going to work.
Well, caller, I could ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
So you think that lip service will not work under those circumstances in terms of... Work with me. In terms of the three groups putting some ideals together by which they would operate. You think that will not work?
Obviously, Mr. Webbo, it is not working. It did not work because most of the convention was letting them know somewhere along the line there's a breach of trust. So listen to the speeches. Somewhere along the line they're saying it's not working. That's why we're here to remind the PM that this is your final and your second and final term.
Okay,
that thing should have been in writing and in law, not just sign something. Listen, you can sign anything in the steps of the courthouse. Okay, why don't you take it in to Parliament and make it into law? Signing anything in document is not going to stand.
Okay, well let me ask you.
That's the whole of the convention. So they say it did not stand.
Okay, so I could go ahead?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know of anything that was in that document which was executed which did not go into law?
I'm not sure of that.
Okay. Do you know whether or not among the three parties they agreed without putting it into law who will be the leader?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Okay. Do you know whether or not that is being executed at the moment?
Yes, sir.
You don't know?
But why is it?
No, work with me. Work with me. So you don't know whether or not if a decision was made or an agreement was made as to who would be the leader. You do not know whether or not that is in effect.
Listen, it was made known that it was agreed on by all parties that the PM, Harris, would be the Prime Minister. It was strongly supported by all parties.
Right.
Now,
so my question is, do we know whether or not that is being executed, A, and B, whether or not it was written into law?
Okay, so you're asking the question if it's being executed now to make it law? That's your question?
No. I'm asking two questions. I'm asking whether or not that a proposal is in effect.
The two-term proposal for the Prime Minister?
Not 2 terms. Let's go over the question again. Do we know whether or not there was an agreement as to who would be the leader by the three parties? The three parties agreed.
From the speeches in the
No. We were talking about, you were talking about the agreements, you know. You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Which should have been put into law. So that they could work.
Exactly.
So I ask you, do we know whether or not there were any agreements that were put in place that is working, that has been executed?
Obviously not.
No. So you...
Obviously no. Obviously not. It's not working. If it was working, there would not be a big brawl at the convention. It was a big brawl at the convention because
one of the agreements they put in place. One of the agreements they put in place was who will be the leader. Correct?
Yes.
Is that agreement still in effect?
Still in effect, and it was agreed upon for 2 terms.
No.
So here's my question.
No, walk with me. No, just walk with me. Walk with me. So it is in effect?
Yes.
Okay. But it was not written into law?
No.
Okay. That's all I wanted to know.
So here's my last question, Mr. Webb, and I'll let you go, and I'll go. And this is the whole concept is, to save all the drama they had on Sunday. At the when the same document was signed on the steps of the courthouse, why didn't they draft something up and make it law in the first term of the Prime Minister to say it's a two-term deal? Why are you going to have all this drumming out at the end of in the middle of his second term to remind him, hey, we had agreement? If they had drafted something into law, as Dr. Bartlett was saying, there would have been less drama at the convention on Sunday.
Okay. I got you.
Put it into law, not talk. Put it into law. Make it a law.
In other words, it's like
there's a two-term law that the president can only serve 2 terms in America. Make it a law.
Okay, so in other words, it's like saying not just talk that get
not
results.
Just talk. No.
Talk that get.
No, listen. Like you said, talk that get results. In this case, in political arena, you can't just talk. I want evidence.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. You know, I think maybe I should get a break now. This is Talk That Get Results with Conrad Naya Liber, the Honorable Spencer Brand, Dr. Patricia Bartlett. Your phone calls on 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. We'll be back after these.
With all the power tower, this is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio, from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Builder's Paradise is offering a large variety of floor and wall tiles at very competitive prices. Builder's Paradise has over 2 million pieces in stock, lots of different styles to choose from. Whether you're renovating or tiling a new house, Builder's Paradise has what you need. Wow! Oh, and remember, we're open all day Saturday to serve you better. This is something that you can't refuse. Visit Builder's Paradise today at the C.A. Paul Southwell Industrial Site in St. Kitts or call them at 466-4938.
Back on this episode of Talk That Get Results with Dr. Patricia Bartlett, the Honorable Spencer Brand, Conrad Naya Liber. Your phone calls on 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. You know, I just want to mention, you made some point very early on which was very instructive in terms of history and political history. I'll get back to that, but let me go to this. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good evening to you and your panel. No document, I think, can supersede the Constitution. And I have heard all sorts of technicalities and arguments that have been introduced, first to justify reneging on the resource sharing arrangements in the Constitution, and then to justify not giving Nevis its fair share of the SIDF money. Okay? Everything seems to be a matter of convenience, right? And nobody challenged the constitutionality of whatever arrangements were put in place that were not written in black and white in the Constitution. And it's ironic that the CBI is now under threat from the Russian invasion of all things. We are now discussing this resource sharing again from the CBI. Okay? You know, very soon there may be very few funds in the CBI or from the CBI left to share, and we're going to be back to square one. For it was not until the SIDF was introduced in 2006, I think it was, that this became a big issue. You know, there were previous coalitions, PAM and NRP, for instance, and this
was not a problem because the money wasn't pouring in then. But once the money started pouring in, it became a problem. Okay? And if we adhere to the Constitution, okay, then I don't think we'd have this problem surfacing. Okay? And therefore, maybe constitutional change, not maybe, constitutional change reform is necessary, but nobody has been talking about it. You know, we've been going around the edges and all the time and just kicking the can down the road. And it's high time that we do some kind of constitutional reform that put these things in stone, and not just put them in stone, somehow, because like I said, they're in the Constitution already. I don't know how successive government got away with not implementing them, not adhering to them.
So you find that they're in the Constitution already, they're not adhering to them, so what you should do is put them in the Constitution again.
I'm saying that it should be challenged.
Oh,
it
so
should
you
be challenged.
work with me.
In the Constitution.
Work with me. So didn't you just say that they should be put in the Constitution?
Well, the Constitution needs reforming because it's not just this. Okay?
Okay, so work with me. So reform it.
Yeah.
And then when you reform it and you put it in like how you're suggesting, then it will work.
Yes, that
okay.
Whatever legal
yeah, I got you.
That can be put in place. That's a lawyer question, really.
It's a lawyer question.
Legal things should be put in place so that there are no loopholes.
I got you. So okay. So you almost seem as if you will be endorsing the Edric Constitution. Brand, you remember a few years ago, Edric presented to me a constitution that will have no loopholes, solve all the problems. And Edric, if you're listening, you know I'm referring to your constitution. Okay, so I was making the point, Naya, that you raised earlier. I think when you were giving your first comment about the history, and when you ignore that, sometimes you might make mistakes, certain mistakes. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good night. Good night, Webber. Hello?
Yes, you're on the air. Good evening. Could you go?
Good evening to your panelists and good evening to all of the listeners. You know, it's quite interesting listening to the discussion. I listened to the whole of the convention myself, and I had mixed feelings, I had mixed feelings. Now, in relation to the NIBIS issue, what a little bit a lot that I learned. It was signed, which means it is a contract. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
It is a contract, you know. Now, if both political parties in NIBIS supported the idea, then there would have been more power behind it. Because, for example, if the Ministry of Finance or Minister of Finance knew that both NRP and CCM stood on the same issue, the same facie as I call it, you won't be balling today, you know. Because they say the same, not that cut go throat, cut cheap throat.
Caller, I don't know. I always like a good debate, you know. But that point that you just made, I find it interesting.
Yes.
Walk with me. Let me tell you why.
Yes.
Because you listen to the whole convention, and both parties in syndicates, or all parties in syndicates, are not on the same page with the sharing of the CBI monies.
That's what.
Because walk with me. Because Mr. Leader of PAM indicated that he will support Mr. Brantley, right?
Yeah.
So, in other words, why should NIBIS have to have all of its parties on the same page in order for the thing to work?
Because
right?
it's an issue.
Yeah, but how come nobody lets me finish when I'm trying to make a point?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Right? When all sides are not on the same page in St. Kitts.
Mm-hmm.
However, right, they're able to keep whatever percentage they're keeping, right? And all of them are not on the same page. You agree with that?
Partly.
Okay.
I'll tell you why I come back to what I said first. The issue with Nevis is not CCM issue, it is Nevis. It is not NRP issue, it's Nevis. And from history, there have been two other coalitions that they didn't get. Now the new party pick up the same issue. It's a national issue for Nevis. And until they reach there, where nobody think, well, if CCM grumble, we got to worry with them. You understand what I'm saying?
I got you. And
so, because when it comes to saying it, you're not going to get PAM and Labour and PLP to agree on the same thing.
Okay. I got you, and we got to be finishing up because we got to go to leadership matters. Okay, who's got the last word over there?
To respond and just to say that it is always easy to blame NRP, but that is not going to work this time. There's a stark reality here that we have to face, that the CBI is coming under some pressure, and we're going to have to start looking about finding diversified ways of surviving economically in St. Kitts and Nevis. So we better start fighting over the CBI receipts and start thinking seriously about having a convention where people can really start focus on issues.
I'm not so sure that it is all downhill with the war in Russia in terms of they're not getting any more CBI monies. On the flip side of that, you might get more because some of those persons may want to come this side. So I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, maybe it could be that way, but then there's a flip side to it as well.
No,
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Webbo.
Hello, you got a half a minute.
Okay, just want to say that hearing the word fair share always excites me. But I know there are two other words in the dictionary that is fair. FAIR is one that I think we're using, but it could be very well be FEAR. You're getting your fair share. Or you're getting the fair share, which is FARE share.
Okay.
I don't know which one of them do you really use it.
Okay.
It could be fair, FEAR.
As I said, caller, you got a half a minute, and we really got to go.
Done it.
Yes. Okay, so. Yeah, the last word.
How many constitutions the thing is Nevis have? Well, sometimes it sounds like they got more than one constitutions around here. But because these things are written in the constitution, and I mean we're not realizing our fair share. I mean, how could this change?
Two callers ago was speaking about the revenue sharing formula. The caller was specifically speaking about Section 110 of the Constitution, and the Charlestown Accord specifically reiterate what was in the Constitution. I just wanted to make that point because what you were talking about was nothing that was outside of the Constitution. That was enshrined in the Charlestown Accord, which was already in the Constitution.
The other thing I find was interesting also in part of the discussion, some persons suggested that they should not have spoken certain things in public. And a caller made a point. What do you mean? They signed the thing in public, so we should not know what is going on? But it tells us the kind of society that we have and we accept, right? There's certain things, we shouldn't say it to the public. Why shouldn't the public know? And then on the flip side, the same set of people come and make noise. They ain't tell us nothing, right? Of course, we have a right to know. And I feel what happens sometimes, is that we tend to pick and choose what the public should know and what they should not know.
Well, I don't know that the public would have been made any wiser with all the cussing that went on, and that was my issue.
What do you mean the public ain't make? You see that comment there?
What the public
work with me. You see that comment there?
Which comment?
A lot of people, right, like to think that they're smart and the public is stupid. In my experience, we got a public that is, they use a phrase, now I like to use it, wicked smart. So sometimes we figure you should not give people certain information because, they're not going to be no wiser for it. Who told you that?
No, but that's not what I'm trying to suggest, Webbo. I'm just trying to suggest that the information that was presented on Sunday was nothing that we had not heard before.
So why not hear it again?
No, Mr. Brantley has been on almost every, press conference. He has been lamenting the fact that we are not getting our fair share. This is not anything new that came up on Sunday. He just went about doing it on Sunday that I thought was distasteful.
Okay, that's what you thought. So what's wrong in saying it again? And if he thinks it is necessary, what's wrong with saying it again going forward?
No, but if you keep saying it over and over again, but there's still no resolution, what is the point? What is the point of disrespecting your invitees? You know, you invite these people from the diplomatic corps.
That's it.
And then you disrespect them.
That's it.
Well, but from 1960 we haven't been getting no fish.
This is Thought That Get Results. This program repeats tomorrow at 10 o'clock following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Brantley tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock for On The Map. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community. Thought That Get Results. You all have a wonderful evening.
Pretty much reflects.
We now go to Leadership Matters.
Women. His special guests this evening are Minister of Gender Affairs, the Honorable Eugene Hamilton, the Honorable Akila Byron Nisbet, as well as the Chief Executive Officer of the Dreamy Decor Group of Companies, Natalie John, and the first Vice President of the Business and Professional Women Group, also known as BPW, Lynn Bass. We are quite happy to have them here with us this evening, and I know that they will bring tremendous contributions to the program. I can't wait to hear what they each have to say, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say when we get to that stage as well.